Andrew, can you speak for a second? Just to make sure I can hear you.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hey, Simon.
Good morning, everybody.
Okay, Andrew, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar around unlocking IBM development and streamlining your development with ARCAD Discover. Hopefully. Simon, do you want to take over the agenda?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us all. This is my first webinar, and it's quite exciting and interesting. And we'll do our best to explain what's going on, and hopefully you'll all learn something about ARCAD and IMS. So the agenda is, as you can see on the screen, welcome and housekeeping. We'll cover that. Then a bit about the IMS and ARCAD software partnership. Then we'll go on to the demo, which is the bulk of this, then benefits to business, and obviously at the end, any questions. Obviously, if you've got any questions, by all means, throughout the webinar, you can obviously chat to them or keep them to the end and we'll discuss them, or we can follow up afterwards.
Yeah, and there is a little question and answer box down at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you can ask your question there, and we'll either get to it live or we can type out a response to you there. Next slide.
So these are just some notes about the actual meeting, so it can run smoothly. Obviously, with the microphones, if you can make certain they're on mute. Questions, as Alan has said, you can chat during the webinar or wait until the end. We will be recording this, or in fact, we are recording this, and that will be sent out to all participants at the end. Just introduce the speakers. Myself, Simon Sherwood, I'm MD of IMS. We've been working with the IBM community for 34 years.
Hello, and Andrew Ireland from ARCAD. I'm come from an IBM development background, originally a 36, 38 developer many years ago, but now much more focused on helping customers modernize and come up with a modernization strategy.
And I'm Alan Ashley. I'm going to be driving your demos today, coming from I started on a Model B50 back in 1989. So I've been on this platform for, well, most of my life, it seems like. Next slide.
So a little bit about IMS for those that don't know. We've been working with the IBM platform for 35 years. We do bespoke solutions based around normally in 4 ERP systems in all sorts of RPG language and other applications. We'll deal with support of a lot of well, the word here legacy, but often in-house developed systems that have been evolving over the years. And we'll deal with anything that works around the IBM I. Obviously, we cover the whole of the UK and Europe, and often we're being involved where, sadly, sites are losing resources, don't have new ones, and we can fill the gap. We're also quite extensively working with interacting the IBM database with modern tools, PHP development, Java, etc. And it's all around having a business problem, and then IMS comes along with a solution, which is why we've teamed up with ARCAD, because we believe what you're going to see now will help allay a lot of the problems that businesses have about concerns about their historic IBM systems.
Thank you very much, Simon. Just a little bit about who ARCAD Software are. We've been around 33 years. Originally came out of an internal project in the European Space Agency in the late 80s. Principally, we have 3 lines of business. ARCAD, which is really aimed at helping IBM customers modernize their application development processes and modernize their applications. Then we have a Drops division, which allows us to do deployments across pretty much any platform, Z, Windows, Linux, cloud, etc. And then the last division is our Dot division, which is around data anonymization. So today we're just going to focus around the ARCAD area of the business. bit about some of our customers. I won't go into a lot of details, but they range really from someone like HSBC, who've got sort of 1,500 RPG developers around the world using ARCAD, all the way down to we've got a customer in Scotland that's got one developer. So it really is a wide range across pretty much any industry. I just want to bring this up. These are the areas that we're looking to address. So this is the latest Fortra survey, and these are the sort of key things that are important to IBMI customers at the moment. A lot of this won't be a surprise. Cybersecurity, very, very important. Increasingly, and we've seen this tick up above things like high availability, modernizing their applications and their IBMI skills are absolutely critical and become a key focus for IT management. And then the other areas that we help are compliance and regulation and migrating to the cloud with things like our Drops portfolio. So let's have a quick look at what standards are evolving at the moment. So we've seen a big move towards cloud on there. Most customers are a hybrid type cloud where they have certain things on premise, but they're increasingly are doing things in the cloud. We're seeing iShops take on agile development. So agile's been around in the non-I world for 20 odd years, but it really has become more and more important for your RPG, your COBOL type development. Industry standards for DevOps. We've seen DevOps, there are standards now, things like Git, Jenkins, VS Code have been accepted by the industry as the way to do it, if you like, the industry standard in that process. And the one that's coming up on all of us very, very quickly is using AI to enhance and speed up development on there. But what we shouldn't forget what the technical arguments for the IBMI are. You know, it has a superb integration between the OS and the database. As far as I know, about the only platform that has an integrated database into the OS. It's very straightforward, as we all know. If you navigating around the IBMI is intuitive in a lot of ways. And as I mentioned, the machine interface is critical to enable us to do regular updates without impacting having to rebuild our applications. The I, in many ways, is unique in the fact that you can run code that you wrote 30, 40 years ago, and it will still run today in most cases. And it is built for transaction processing. There's not a better transaction processing engine on the market. But one of the key things we see is because it started in the 80s, that we're getting to the point where that first generation of developers, if you like, are starting to retire. So skill depletion is becoming really critical at this point. And it's the one thing we're hearing more and more for customers about why they think it's a valid reason to move off that platform. And the real question is, where do your next generation of developers come from? They're not going to be the people who started in the 80s on the AS400 as it was then. And that's where AI is a real changer for legacy systems, because at the moment, you've probably got 2 or 3 key people in your organization who understand the structure of your application, how it was built, because they've been with you maybe for 20 or 30 years. They are getting to that retirement age. So how do we take that information and make that available to everyone? And that's really where AI is playing, where it solves that issue of the knowledge around your application and enabling that to be available to everyone. So let's have a quick conversation, look at why AI with ARCAD Discover. One of the key things I want to show is underpinning all of this is an ARCAD repository that is a cross-reference and analysis of your application. That repository understands the entire application, all the relationships in there between your fields, files, programs, CL programs, etc. In there. And it allows you to do that cross-reference analysis. It understands the dependencies within your application and full integrity of that. And it underpins the ARCAD solutions. Discover sits on top of that repository and brings an AI and graphical front end to that. So it allows you to actually use natural language and to actually query and ask questions about your application. What's the relationship between this and this, for instance? And then it will work out that relationship and show you that relationship in a diagram or in text form. So very, very powerful, makes it very easy for people who don't have detailed knowledge of how the application exactly works to quickly get up to speed on there. We have information around the health of your current application built into there, how many files you got, programs, etc. Documentation, we can document that based on there. So I can actually say, build me a Confluence or a documentation for that. The other really nice thing in ARCAD Discover is data lineage. We have the ability to follow a field as it moves throughout the application and moves from field to field. So let's say a customer balance field gets moved to a work field, that then gets moved to a screen field, that screen field then maybe gets moved to another database field. And we can follow the stream of that data moving throughout your business. And then last within ARCAD Discover is it explains, it gives you an English description of a program. Now we use things like Copilot to do that. So I can actually have a look at, in English, what does this program actually do? Just summarize Discover. It's aimed at developers, but also non-developers, business analysts, data scientists, non-specialists, if you like. Enables them to actually get an understanding of what's in that repository, query it in a natural language interface. And it's really trying to drive the benefit of giving you quick access to that information, so 60% gains in application knowledge. Also key, because it understands all the relationships in an application, it's also key for when you're doing specifications to make sure you don't miss anything. So you're actually sizing the amount of work correctly on there. And because of the AI interface, it makes it much, much quicker to actually pull that information out. You just interact it as you would do normally on there, and it works out the actual question. Just before I hand over to Alan, I'm going to mention a couple other products which are complementary. ARCAD Discover, we're not going to cover this in a demo today, but if you're interested, by all means, reach out to us. That is our code review solution. So that will look at things like your coding standards, your code quality and security, and automatically run a review against there. And we ship about 100 rules as standard, but they can be customized on there. And security, we're finding, is increasingly a big issue for our customers on the I. So they want to make sure that their RPG or COBOL code is secure. They're not writing some dangerous vulnerabilities. So we also include things like the CWEs in there, and we're increasing those all the time on there. So it's a peer review. It's going to reduce the amount of time you need a senior developer to look over other people's code. It's going to enforce higher quality coding that is also to your company coding standards. And one of the big ones is going to find the security vulnerabilities. Not going to touch modernization tools today, but we have a number of them. We can modernize your database. I'll mention a little bit about Transformer RPG, which allows us to automatically convert from fixed format to free format. Increasingly popular is Transformer microservices, which allows us to extract routines out of a legacy program, a monolithic type program, and convert that into a web service. Transformer Field, this is a product we've had for quite a while, but it's had a big uptake recently, and it ties into the data lineage, where people are now starting to run out of, they need to expand the size. And this enables us to actually expand the size of a field across an entire application. And then the last one is Transformer Sign-On, if you've got a sign-on application. So the only one I'm going to touch base on is Transformer RPG, very quick. That literally converts fixed format RPG into modern free format RPG with the push of the button. So that is a 5 to 10 second conversion. What I can do is I can either convert everything, but more likely I'm going to open a bit of code, maybe in VS Code or RDI, whatever I'm using as my tool. I push a button and it will convert all of that to a free format, including things like my D specs, my F specs, etc. We've seen customers who said they're getting 50% productivity by using it to move to free format, because free format is quicker and easier to maintain. In the conversion process, if you ask some of my colleagues, they'll say it's 99.99% over doing it manually on there, because it's literally a 10 to 20 second conversion. Right, Alan, hopefully I've given you enough time for the demo.
Oh, yes, yes, plenty of time. So let me just share my screen here. Bear with me. Okay, there we go. And you should be able to see my screen now. And again, if there's any questions that pop up during this, if you'll just go down to the question and answer section and just post your question, and either myself or one of my colleagues will get to that or let me know that there is a question out there. So let's dive into Discover. And as you can see, it's based on a web browser interface. And so the back end is actually running on the IBM I, and it is tied into that metadata repository that Andrew was talking about. So just a little understanding of what we're looking at here. So if we go into the settings, I just want to show this right off because it's always one of the questions that comes up because we do involve AI in this. And there are a couple of sections under the AI where you define it out. And one of the nice things is depending on your region, where you're at, what the company enterprise may be, you can disable this so that it is not being used. This can be used as an on-prem. The AI can be on-prem, or it can be one of the public ones as well. And you can see all the information that goes into it. We're tying into some other items as well as you're going through there. And there's a couple of different sections for this. As you know, there's a code diagram, an AI assistant, and a functional tree AI assistant that comes down through there. I don't have this one turned on today, but I'm primarily going to be focused on the AI assistant. This is going to be your natural language. This is where you ask it a question. And this is going to be kind of the code explainer, where it kind of tells you what the code is doing. And you can have either or both on or off, and they're totally independent of each other as you're going through this. So let's take a look at the tool itself. When you go into Discover, this is where you're going to start. And again, you can jump right into the repository. So I want to show one thing here real quick, and I'm going to see if I can find it real quickly. It is called, let's see, it's going to be starting with Sam, because I want to kind of show you how the AI is really going to be pretty powerful when it comes to this. So here's the menu. And I know from working in this application for a while that this SAM menu is the very beginning. Okay. And so I want to see the flow in the IO for this. And so I've got to click here, and here's all the items that come into this. I can drag those around, but I'm trying to figure out how this ties into the country file. So, well, this might be a country program here. So I need to show all the dependencies here. Okay. Okay. There's my country table. So I took a guess. That's where it was. I could have come up here and said, show me all the dependencies for this guy. What is that? And now you're starting to kind of bounce around, and you're not really sure where you're trying to get to because you wanted to know how to go from the main menu to the country table. Well, with the AI assist, you can literally come down here and ask it a question, and such as map from the SAM menu to the country table, and hit go. And it's going to go out there and do the calculations for you. And it's only going to show you the relevant components involved with that. Now, one of the things with AI is you will occasionally come across little glitches in there because it is being used by the public, and it will be a little time consuming when you go through there. But for example, here's one that was mentioned. I'm going from this art program, and it shows you all the way over to updating the article table. And it shows you all those items out there. And I'm just asking it a question, such as maybe let's list all the components with this COU 301 program. I'm going to hit that, and it's going to go out there, and it's going to look at the repository. It's going to find all the items that are out there. And right now my AI engine is glitching on me, but you see the point here. And one of the things of it is when you get to this point, you can also save your diagram, which can be used later in your documentation for this. So let's go back to the repository, dig around a little bit and see what's available from this view. And now one of the things is this view can be used by a developer, of course, but if you're not a developer on the eye directly, maybe you're in the business analyst, maybe you are doing some documentation exercises for this. Maybe you're new to the eye, coming from a Java or a Python world, and you're curious to how the interactions take place within the tables, within the programs on your system. And of course, you can build out your component list with different filters. One of the items that's really nice is this working list. So this working list is actually used later in documentation because you're building the items that you want to work with. And so you can come in and say, okay, I want this guy, and you can add it to the working list. You just drag it over and pop it in there. It's already in there, so it's not going to show up. But I can take this address. Let's do this one since I know it's not in there, and pop it in there. And now it's in my working list. And so I can go into this working list and I can see all the items that are in there and so forth. And if I go to the next one, there's the one I just added. And so this is maybe you're building a list of things you want to explore as you're going through it. You've also got a couple of other filters over here with messages and functional trees. Now, let's go back over and take a look at one of the programs and what you get from this main view. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look at this COU 301. This is an RPG program. And when I click on it, I get a couple of options up here at the top. It's going to tell me about the component. I can look at the flow, any IOs, and any code. So I want to see what components are associated with this. So I can click on this and it's going to show me the components. There's 2 database files. Let's see what those are. The country, logical, in the table. Okay, that makes sense. There's a display file as well. And I can actually come down here and look at this display file and go, what is this? What are the inputs into this display file? So I'm actually going out and looking at the source and saying, this is what the screen would look like if you so desired. Maybe 132. That's what the screen's going to look like to the end user. And so you can understand what they're looking at and how that's going to be interacting with the different programs that are involved. You can also see there's another module in here. You can click on that and you can see that all the different modules start showing up. And again, everything is draggable on here. And from each one of these, you can get more information. You can add it to your lists as well. So if I like this country table, I can come down here and I can look at the flow of just the country table. Say, hey, what do you want involved with this? I want all the items that are in here. So if I make a change to the country table, I know these are going to be the components that have to be updated or looked at. And here's the flow of that. You got service programs going into RPG programs, which write over to the country table. Here's your logical, and there's back and forth between it and this COU 300 program. And so you can just see all this visually. And again, you can save these diagrams for later when you go into the documentation. Now, I do want to go back and look at some of the code stuff on here. So let me pull up my list again. So we're going to focus on this guy. We're just going to kind of beat him up today. I want to look at the code. I'm curious to see how this thing's put together. And when I go into it, it breaks it down and it shows me all the subroutines that are included within this module. And you can see it over here, the little diagram, what it looks like. And as I go through it, it changes those out. And of course, it's scalable just with a click of a mouse to go through those. And so I'm going to look at this display one here. This one's pretty straightforward. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. That's pretty straightforward. And if I take a look at the source code, this is the source code for it. Pretty straightforward source code. But what does that mean? So I can click on documentation, and this is going to use our AI engine, and it's going to reach out there and say, hey, look at the metadata repository. We're going to pass some information in there. Can you tell me what this does in English, in essence? And it tells you what each part of this is doing. This SO1 DSP, okay, that's the beginning of the substring. in the source code. Remember right here? It's literally walking you down through the source code and telling you what each part of it does in essence to the code itself. Now, one of the things it's not doing yet, and I say yet, because AI is basically, in essence, a toddler who is running really fast and growing and maturing at warp speed, basically. So today it can't really see some of that business logic. I said, but that's the reason I say yet, because it is coming. You'll be able to see, it'll be able to determine what the business logic is by starting to look at how everything ties together. Again, we know that information. The AI engines just haven't learned how to put that forth yet, but it's coming. Trust me, it'll be there soon. But if you're a Java developer and you're curious to see how this interacts with files and what these programs are doing, you can come in here and maybe you get an understanding how the computer code works and how those interactions are taking place when you're going down through here. So here's a different part of this procedure. It's going to go out there and it's going to look at all this information and see what it's doing. So this one is going to write to it's going to do something to a display file. I know that's a display file there. If I scroll down through here, there's the main logic of it. It's got some subroutines going down through there. There's your different indicators as it's going through there. And of course, you got the source code that you can see here for that main procedure there. If I come down here to the display, I want to show one more of these where it's got a couple of writes into this country file. If I come over to the documentation, and this is where, like I said, the Java developer can come in and take a look at this and say, how does this logical or a view get used within the source code? So you can come down through here and you see the looping structure of it and what is it trying to get to. So maybe that helps the developer figure out what's going on within that story of things. So let me come back over to my repository and pick on this guy one more time. So we've looked at the components, and this works for tables or files or anything to that effect. Actually, let me do this real quick. I'm going to actually come down and show you a little data lineage. If I can find a nice little table, let's see. Come back out of this. I want to go to, I don't want to use this one. Working list. See if I've got any in here that I can use. We can take a look at this guy and see if he shows me what I need to see off of it. So I can come in here and look at the data lineage for this. And I'm not sure if this guy is actually linked over to anything. He is not. Let me find one that is, though. I think it is object type. And you can see there's a nice little search that you can go through here to find the components that you need, that you want, that you can deal with coming down through here. Let's see here, number 2. I'm looking for one that I know has a bunch of things that come off of it, and I think it is one of the orders. Bear with me. Yeah, let's take a look at this guy here and see if he has some nice data lineage options off of it. So you can come down here and you can look at the data lineage. And so you can see the different fields that are in here. Let's see, does he have any associations? He does. And so you can come off of here and you can see it's going to be this program. It's going to come into this program here. You can see the different inputs, outputs that is going to be required. And from this, and this is continuing to grow and go deeper within the data lineage. So I can also look at maybe the order date. You can see where it's being used directly, and you can see what the input's going to be into that field. You can hover over the different sections to see how that's going to be used, what type of value it is going into it. You can also see the little bit of line of the code. It says order date equals, and it's got some code behind it. And that's what the code is being used within the SQL RPG LE program, ORD 901. That is what is being used to update the file order. And so you can see that right there. So if I were to change anything, you would be able to track that down and see how that impact is going to be. So I've got about 15 minutes left. And before I go into the documentation section, I want to see if there's any questions, anything that's popped up, because I do know that there are some different things with this tool that some people look at and go, okay, this is nice. I like how it works. And it's very intuitive. It's basically a point and click kind of situation for this. And that is really nice. So one of the nice things about this is it is very point and click as you're going through it. Now, one of the things I do want to show right before I go into the documentation is I want to look at this macroscopic view. Now, this was a very popular function back in the day, where you could group when there's like these naming standards around things. So if you have different parts of your application that are grouped together, but they do have interdependencies across your application, you can define those out within what's called a functional tree. And so, like, for example, here's some of my items under com. This could be my commercials or my customers, and I can add those. And here's all the subproducts that go into those. And if I wanted to look at maybe some of the parameters, now you can start to see how things are starting to tie together. So there's something in here, and I can expand this out. And you can see this, start to see the different programs. I can use my little window over here to drive around, and you can start to see some of the interconnectivity in the param, within the par sector of what you defined is a set of these programs, and you can start to see how it ties in over to the log files and maybe coming off of this SAM, which is going to be the SAM menu that we talked about earlier, the very beginning of the application. You can start to see how those things are tied together. And again, you can save this diagram and it can go into your documentation. So, and this can be defined however you want it. You can come through and you can add components to it. You can remove components as you're going through it. So if you have a new component that you've created, you need to add it to it, you can come in here and select it and add it to this functional tree as you're going through it, just to help you diagram it out. Now, lastly, I want to go through and show you a little bit of the documentation that's available with this. So there's a little bit of setup when you go through it. You would create a model, and it's just as simple of naming it and deciding what do you want to see about your components. You can maybe look at the program descriptions and hear all the things that are involved with that. And you would just go through and click and save them off as you want them. And that's going to build out your configuration. As you can see here, I've got a couple of models already defined for this. Then the next step is I'd come into my documentation generator. And I'm actually going to flip screens because one of the nice things is this can be exported out to a markdown language, or it can come over to Confluence. And so I want to come over to this guy real quick where I can actually get out of the firewall. And you can see where I've got a couple of projects defined. And this is using my generator that I used earlier. I name a version. Maybe this is going to be version 3 of my documentation or version 2. I can come in here and create a new version for it. Which model do I want to use for it, and so forth. So I'm going to pick this guy here. I want to add my components. Here's your working list that I was talking about earlier. And you would add that to it. And I want to do this other one as well. And you see those. Those have been added. Now I want some diagrams. I want to add some diagrams to this. You can see all the diagrams that I have saved in the past coming up through here. So I want to take that one. Oh, let's do another one like this. And then I've got those on there and I would just save them off. And then I'd come around and hit generate. And this is going to generate the model behind the scenes. And once that's done, you come up to this export option. You can take it as a markdown, which is basically an HTML that can go out into any kind of like Git repository or something to that effect, so you can follow it along. Maybe you create this coming off of a version that you've created, and you go through and you add this markdown into that version so you can see that information. And this is the information that you get for that. Where do you want it to go? And then the Confluence, you give it a title and the space key of your space within Confluence. After you've gone through all this and you hit export, this is what you get in Confluence. So here's one that I have done earlier. It takes just a minute or two for it to process all that information and send it up to the repository. So I'm not going to do that one right immediately in front of you because it will take a little bit of time, and I want to leave them, Andrew and Simon, a little bit of time at the end here to finish out their part of this. But you can see here, it's giving me all the information that I had selected about the components that I was working on. I even have a section where I can look at my diagrams down through here. I can look at this program and I can see how it all ties together. Here's the component. It's coming off here's the main menu. It comes into this area here, the calling menu. All the objects that are coming off of it, you can see that right here, right just with a click within Confluence if you're curious to how things are put together. And everything is hot linked within here. So if I come down here and I look at, let's say this guy here, this 301, and I want to go straight to the free diagrams, if there's any diagrams for that particular one, it'll be right there. And you can click and go right through that just like you would on anything else within Confluence. So that is, a really nice way to kind of keep up with your application, because developers don't like to write documentation. Although this isn't a business logic necessarily documentation, it's telling you how it's all put together. So for historical purposes and auditors like this, they can track and see what it's doing. What have the changes been over time? And they can look at some of the notes that have been put in here as well. So in a nutshell, and that leaves us with about 8 minutes or so left for Andrew and Simon to finish out and talk about how this could benefit your business and what are some of the next actions that you can take along these same lines. So Andrew, if you want to take over the screen share, I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Alan. I think you can see it's a very, very powerful tool for actually understand your entire application, and it automatically works out relationship between everything in there. Right, Simon, can I hand over to yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Alan. That was very informative, and even as a non-technical person, I could understand what you're talking about and what you were trying to illustrate. I think obviously we've got the benefits to your business. I think one of the challenges that we see, and as we discussed at the beginning of this, there are lots of companies that are having concerns about the security of their system because a lot of the resources are retiring and leaving the business, but they want to carry on using it. It's work for the business and it can be upgraded, and they want to carry on using it. And this tool is a part of the arsenal to enable you to document it so it can be maintained for many years to come, and not only maintained, but in working with IMS, we can backfill the skill gap, we can supply resources, we can learn your system using this tool so we can support it, if not as well, nearly as well as your current or previous team did. And we can keep supporting the business, because obviously businesses are modernizing, they're having to become more aware of security issues. They've got to support probably under less budget. So that is, this is a part of your armory to keep the business going, which is relying upon these core applications, rather than the other option which people consider is migrating away with all the downsides it has. So, I think this is a good solution to a growing problem, and IMS and ARCAD can help you plan the whole review of what you've got. Next slide.
Back to me already? Okay, so I'll go through my demo one more time.
Well,
There you go,
just
Simon.
slip of the.
Yeah. So sort of this is a bit of a summary, because obviously IMS we've got a lot of experience, but one of the challenges we have, like anybody else, is we don't know every system out there, and every system is unique. And certainly we're seeing, although we have a particular expertise of Infor products, there are an awful lot of companies out there that have totally bespoke or very bespoke systems, or perhaps we've got an old ERP system that has been heavily bespoke, and there is no documentation. But we can support that. You know, we've got a good team of experienced people, and we can ensure that your business continues and supports everything going forward. And obviously, using ARCAD, we can sort of traverse that skill gap, because obviously we come in, we don't know the system, often there's no documentation, but by using this, we can help you document what's already there and continue to support that. We can obviously develop these systems to continue supporting the business, and obviously we can be working in RPG2 or free format or other languages. And obviously using some of the other ARCAD tools, we can obviously help you upgrade to the later languages with the benefits of that, because obviously having things all in the latest format means it's easier for staff to incorporate them where people are not training on RPG2. We can obviously also help support at a cost-effective scale, because often sometimes you don't need to replace people as they retire, you just need somebody to backfill and support, and we can do that with our sort of blend of both onshore and offshore resources. We can help you modernise. A lot of people don't like green on black, although probably most of us here will be used to it. We can help you have a nice GUI front end, which means people are oblivious to what it's running on, and we can integrate it with all sorts of other systems, whether it's a WMS system, whether it's a reporting tool, whether it's a web or a portal application. All this can be done seamlessly, but all based around your very core IBM I. And more than happy to, work with people if they're interested to do an audit of your system, and just to understand what your concerns are, and then trying to come up with a tailored solution to overcome the concerns that you have.
You brought up a good point there, Simon. One of the things that Andrew even mentioned was the IBM I is such a great database for business transactions. And you are getting a lot of new front ends coming into this, whether or not it's a web browser or something to that effect. But using the tables that are in the I, you can use Discover to see what those programs and what those interfaces are looking like today. And maybe that's where you start to build these new front ends, because those are going to be your core tables, or if you haven't converted yet, DDS, on your IBM I, and you need to know how to input into those. And Discover can help you determine what are all the inputs into that maybe become part of a new web front end. Let's see if we've got any questions out there. I know there was one, and I can't remember if it was in this one. I don't see it in this one. But with the Code Explain that is coming out, Andrew, how does Code Explain, is it comparable to Discover?
So no, it's very complementary. So obviously there's one bit where we're using things like Copilot today to actually do that AI description in natural language. But Copilot, Watson Code Assistant is aimed at individual RPG program and explaining that. With Watson, with ARCAD Discover, we can look at the entire application. What's the relationship between all of my programs, all of my files? Diagram me, give me an interrelationship diagram, give me a program calling stack. All that information at an application level is available. And no doubt in the future, we may well plug Watson X into Discover and use that if there's a customer requirement for that.
Right.
So no,
As I said,
complementary.
AI is
Watson X
very,
Discover,
very young. So
it's very
expect a
young and
lot
it's
of
aimed
things.
at individual program compared to Discover, which is really helping you the entire application.
All right, very good. I know we have reached the our time on the webinar. Let me see if there's any other questions or anything else out there. While I'm looking, is there anything else, Simon, Andrew, that you want to say on this?
I think one question would be useful to answer, Alan, is just, what versions of IBM this can run on, because obviously some clients have got a range, and obviously it'd be good to know so people don't get excited and then find that it won't run on their version, or it might give them a good opportunity to upgrade, of course.
Right. So of course Discover's going to work best on those OS, the IBM I releases that are supported by IBM. So really the 7s and ups. Probably even we'll get down to the 7.2s and ups will probably be the key range here. If you're running a 3.6 or a 3.7 or a 4.3, I guess you might want to look at an upgrade into the new Power 10 that's coming out, or that's out, or maybe the future Power 11 whenever it's announced, to upgrade to make some use of things. But it's primarily going to be focused on the somewhat newer releases of the OS and what's supported by IBM today.
Yeah, I mean 7X, 7.1, whatnot. It's over 10 years old, so there's you don't have to be right up to date on there. So we can go back quite a ways. But if you're in if you're version 6 or version 5 of the OS, there's just a lot more limitations on what can be done across the board on there. The other thing I would really like to point out, we didn't show it in too much detail, but that power of that natural language, asking it questions, typing in a question, and getting it to figure out the answer is really, really powerful.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, okay, gentlemen, we have reached our time frame here. I would like to thank everyone for joining today. So have a good rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. For me on the East Coast in the States, I'm going to go have a rest of an enjoyable morning and a full day. And I wish my colleagues in the UK a great, happy rest of your day. And until we speak again.
Thank you, Alan and Andrew,
Thank you, everyone.
for running this and doing all the hard work. And obviously, if anybody hears any further questions, by all means, reach out to myself. You've probably got my contact details, or to Sophia, and obviously we'll forward them on to Alan and Andrew where appropriate. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh.